Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we are talking about the spell Snare.
This is nifty. This is an Artificer Druid Ranger little spell. Is it good? This is from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. It's certainly neat. Could this have been an item? Probably. But here we are.
It is an item.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get into it. What does it do?
Okay, minute cast time, so you can't like just drop this middle of combat. You actually have to prep it, which is a big bummer. Range of touch, verbal somatic material components. You need 30 feet of cord or rope, which is consumed by the spell, like you would for a snare.
Yeah.
Like a regular snare. It lasts until dispelled or triggered, so it's there forever. While you cast the spell, you use the cord or rope to create a circle with a 5-foot radius on a flat surface within reach, like you would making a snare. When you finish casting, the cord or rope disappears to become a magical trap. Now we're into magic territory, so it vanishes. The trap is invisible. The trap is nearly invisible and requires a successful investigation check against your spell save DC to be found. The trap triggers when a small or larger creature moves into the area protected by the spell. If the triggering creature must succeed on a dex save or falls prone and is hoisted into the air and hangs upside down 3 feet above the protected surface where it is restrained. The restrained creature can make a dex saving throw with disadvantage at the end of each of its turns to end the restraint effect on a success. Alternatively, another creature that can reach it can use its action to make an intelligence arcana check against your spell save DC to end the effect.
So they just can't pull?
Yeah. Yes, that is correct. They can't just pull, and that's stupid. All right, initial thoughts, Bob. Where are you at with this?
I'm not thrilled with it. All right. The minute cast time is one strike.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I don't know when you would use this. I mean, before I get into that, like what you're saying, it's you use a rope, just like a snare. It's nigh invisible, but
Just like a snare?
any ranger worth his salt is gonna camouflage his snare.
Mm-hmm.
But the big difference is you lose your rope. Like with
Yeah,
a
it's gone forever.
mundane snare, you get to take the rope back at least.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, the minute cast time, along with the creature can just keep making dex saving throws?
Correct.
Yeah, at disadvantage, but it's not like you set a trap and you walk away for hours and dinner's going to be waiting when you get back. I mean, at the end of each of its turns, I mean, it's eventually going to get free. When do you use this? You're not using it during combat.
Yeah.
It's not something you can set and come back to later.
It is something you can set and come back to later, right? Because, like, hypothetically, this is something you do at first level. You try and, like, go to the early 8 goblins to come attack your camp, and you get one of them there, and everyone goes, oh, look, the snare did a thing.
Yeah.
I don't see that being particularly exciting. It being an indefinite duration means just, like, before you camp, you can just spend all of your first level spell slots and throw up a bunch of snares around camp and just be like, if we're ambushed in the night, we have these 5 spots, don't step in them, they're snared. It'll be really funny inevitably whenever your barbarian or wizard does step on one of them because they don't remember that it's there because it's nigh invisible, or you just forget to tell them. That also absolutely could happen, making this about as hazardous to the average adventuring party as it is to the enemies they're trying to prevent, especially because if you do this every time you lure rest, there are going to be a lot of rests where you're not fighting things, and your wizard's just like, God damn it, I'm hoisted up in the air again when they come out of their tent because they were, forgot to check for the snares that the ranger put down the night before. It ends up being like this, I don't know. Here's my next immediate question. Are you aware of any rules for setting up snares that do it mundanely?
But the rule is you tell your DM, I want to set up a snare, and he says, okay, I'll work that out in my head, how that works.
I have a hunch it's going to look almost exactly like the spell description, which is me really irritated. Like, I feel like they could remove all of the spell components of this and just have this in a little make your own traps section. Have this in your own little, like, with a little bit of ingenuity, some, we'll call it trap makers materials, and some rope, you can make snares, and you can set snares, and you can just do that, and you make like a survival check as a ranger or whatever, and that seems like the direction this was supposed to be in. And instead they're like, well, our trap system in this game is utter disrepair. It's terrible. We didn't do a very good job fleshing out players being able to make traps, so let's just give them a spell that does it.
Is there
and I
no
think
trap
that's a disservice
thing in 5e?
to my knowledge. There's stuff within the book that this is printed. There's stuff about expanding tool proficiencies. So like you can set a trap with these tools. It just doesn't give us a very robust workings around with that, which isn't amazing. It just like it's like a little paragraph blurb. So like it's still between the player and the DM to figure out exactly how the trap works. But I feel like we probably should have had 5 or 10 basic traps that players could set. Like that seems like it's not a particularly tall order, especially for a game set about like wilderness exploring. That I don't know. I would have expected that to exist. I didn't see anything in my quick search while recording this video to see if there is. But like, I guess, if Snare is the best we get, I'm not thrilled with it. I don't want to spend a spell slot on this, like, and have it do nothing a lot of the time, which is what's going to happen. And if it does activate, like, this is a worse hideous laughter, right? Because you had to prep it and you can't use it anywhere, and it only affects smaller creature it only affects smaller, larger creatures. It doesn't affect any size creature beyond small. So like if a gargantuan thing steps on your little square, you can be like yoink, and up into the air you go. That's kind of funny. I don't know.
That's a weird. No, well, I guess just rules out tiny.
Yeah, it just rules out tiny. So tiny things ignore this, but gargantuan things don't, which is just like
the T-Rex steps on your Snare.
Yeah, I'm really confused as to why this doesn't say small or medium. It doesn't. It's a boon to it that it doesn't, and it'll lead to maybe some silly moments. But like, you have to put this on your character sheet for that to happen. I don't think you probably should be doing that. Like the restrain condition isn't even that good. The restrain condition, when I say it's not that good, like compared to some of the other conditions, restrained basically just means you're not moving anywhere and your attacks are made with disadvantage and your attacks against you have advantage, right? But it doesn't like prevent you from taking actions. It doesn't deny anything you would want to be doing on your turn. It just
moving.
Yeah, you can't move. Your speed becomes 0. You can't benefit from bonuses to your speed. Attack rolls against you have advantage, and its attack rolls have disadvantage, and you have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. Which
I think that's pretty good.
First, yes. For Snare, it also like it has disadvantage on the subsequent dex saves to get out of this, so it's going to have a bad time. That's why like it even specifies in the description can make a dexterity saving throw with disadvantage at the end of each of its turns. That's due to the restrained condition in my DM brain. If it is also just on top of it, then they will get advantage for some reason. You could say it's super disadvantage. It doesn't really matter. Like 2 times of a disadvantage because they're restrained and this spell imposes it. But at the end of the day, this is like a minute long, have to set up space required restrained condition, which can be rewarding if it ever happens. And like you'll pinata an ogre, and that'll be a fun encounter every once in a while. I just don't foresee that being all that common of a use case for it.
Well, yeah, because I'm still thinking it's like the whole thing with the glyph of warding and other such spells where you have to lure your enemies toward you or something. Like you were talking before about the campfire where you're all sleeping around and you got some snares set up around you. But yeah, there's going to be the times when your own barbarian trips the snare, or there might be times when an enemy comes and trips the snare. But those will be fun and silly. But I think more often than not, all amount to very little to nothing happening. Because if you're counting on that to wake you up and they don't actually make any noise, they just struggle for a few turns and then get themselves free, then who cares?
Yeah, I mean, like this pairs alongside alarm and stuff, right? So like maybe there's a character that's the whole thing is traps. You take alarm, you take snare, and you're like the ultimate defensive. No one's going to come in here and screw us over. I don't think that's a particularly fun fantasy to try and live out. I don't think it has a great amount of support either.
But if you do both, one's going to happen and one's not, because if the alarm goes off, the creature's going to run away. If you trips the snare, or if he trips the snare, it's back. Then it doesn't set off the alarm, and unless you have your snares directly on the perimeter of your alarm
set up where your alarm would be, which feels like not where you want to put them. The other thing we haven't touched on at all, a 5-foot radius space is tiny. This is one space on a battle map. That is not a huge area. By sheer variance, a lot of times things just aren't going to be going. If you're in any kind of open environment, things can just opt to not go in the snare space. And the snare doesn't care if, like, you can't really influence who goes into the snare and who doesn't, right? If there's a 5-foot wide passageway, right, and you snare it, you've now said anything down further in this passageway coming at us, we have to go through the snare first. That's not where you want to be. So that means like you can jump over it and stuff, and the monster will see you jumping over it and being like, "What are they doing?" and then jump over it too, probably, right? Like it gives you this awkward situation where you have to only use it whenever you know things are coming from a specific direction and you want to snare them, and it's a relatively small space, so you're more likely to actually get them to go in it. Like, imagine you set this up on your average campsite, and then just by sheer variance, things attack you from one side or from a variety of angles, but then just never touch the space. That could definitely easily happen and make the spell entirely pointless.
You could set up
It's
decoy snares around it.
so they step on the real snare, not
Right.
the decoy snare. Also, to the use case of it, it taking you being able to set them up before your long rest that I mentioned earlier, it has dawned on me you would need to carry around just like reels and reels and reels of rope because they're there forever and the rope is expended. So, yeah, I'm not super high on this. There's probably going to leading. I think the spell will lead to some fun encounters. I think there will be enough times at the table, especially if you take this like first level with levels 1 to 3. You'll get a goblin in this, you'll get a bugbear in this, you'll get a skeleton in this, or a zombie or something, and then everyone will have a fun time playing pin the tail on the zombie, where the tail is the swords and clubs you brought with you. And you'll just pinata the crap out of it, and everyone will be like, "Oh, that was amazing! The snare was hilarious. There, the big scary monster is hanging up by its toes. That's funny." I think that's where it kind of stops, and I think once you get that one gimmick encounter done with it, you'll recognize like, "Oh, this is probably just worse than any of the first levels I could have been casting anyway." The restraint condition, one restraint conditionally with a minute cast time setup that requires Think walking into a space is so many hoops to jump through for an effect that is at its best a side graded hideous laughter, right? Hideous laughter, I want you to fall on the ground and start laughing. You drop prone, everyone gets advantage attack rolls against it. All that good stuff still happens, but it can happen anytime, anywhere by just pointing and saying laugh. With Snare, you have to jump through all these extra hoops to get the restraint condition, which is again about a side grade to falling prone and having a bad time laughing. You're also like Tasha's also incapacitates them, so they can't even take actions. They can still take actions in the snare. All of this leads me to go, I don't see this coming together. I don't see it being worth it. I think this probably should have just been in rules somewhere for rogues and rangers to play with, and it's not, and that's a bummer.
And I will add that I am normally a sucker for anything that's permanent, but this I can't get behind.
You can make a regular mundane snare permanently.
Yeah, but
right? Like,
even
why would I
this
need this?
is, all right, this is permanent, but unless I am spending the next few months hanging around here waiting for somebody to trip it, then yeah, all I'm gonna do is maybe annoy somebody in the distant future.
Yeah. It doesn't even like slow things down for all that long, right? So like you spend a minute for it. If your objective is to like put it in a corner behind you to trip up enemies, they're gonna run into it, fail 3 dex saves, and then pop out of it and keep moving, right? Like it doesn't have any meaningful hampering as far as like other utility goes. This is really only usable if you have set up at a spot and tend to fight to the death at that spot and know something's going to hit this trap. The amount of environments that's going to happen are so few.
That could be useful if you're running away from somebody, except that the minute cast time.
Yeah, you literally can't use this while running away from somebody. It takes longer to set up than it does to move.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't love it.
No. Got anything else to say about it?
I think I made all the things I wanted to mention about it. I think I've mentioned.
Yeah, me too. You got a rating?
I think this is probably. I think the fun encounters that are to be had at first level probably justify it being a 2. I think the condition is fine enough that like you'll be in that one quarter that is like, oh god, there's a monster definitely coming from that end, and we know it's sleeping back there. Someone shout and wake it up. I'll have the snare set up. It'll be cool. We'll hit it like a pinata. The spooky mummy comes out and gets thrown up into the air, and everyone just whacks the crap out of it. That'll be fun. That'll happen once a campaign, and it won't be cast after that. So I think a 2 is fair. I don't think it's uncastable. The condition is fine enough. It's just going to be really hard to make this good ever.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I don't hate it, but I can't justify anything higher than a 2. So we are agreed. All right. Well, let us know what you think in the comments, people.
Here's a question.
And,
quick question before we wrap things up. What would this have to say for it to be a cantrip? Right? Like, I'm curious as to how close to that territory are we. What if it said like you can only have 1 snare up at a time? Could this be a cantrip? I think probably,
I think so.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it could be a cantrip as it stands right now, and I still wouldn't take it.
I mean, it still makes you make 30 feet of rope. It's still basically setting a mundane trap. So yeah, that's a great point.
It's just, I'm throwing my rope away.
Yeah. All right, commenters, if you got any thoughts about that, let us know. Or if you got any other thoughts about Snare, I'd love to hear it.
All right. Well, that was Snare. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it, a gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.